You are listening to the In Between Sales Calls podcast with Derek Shebby, episode 28. Welcome, everyone. The next two episodes are going to be very unique. About a month ago, I was asked by a really large organization to customize a sales training that their teams could use to set more appointments during the pandemic. So I designed it off of, past experience that I had from work in the Fortune 500 world. And I also designed it off of what I know to be working already during these times that we're in. So I called the training Virtual Selling, How to Get Your Message Right. And after I presented it to that organization, they ended up having huge results. I mean, it was really effective for them in getting a boost in the number of meetings that they were setting and in starting more sales cycles with their current clients that they were meeting with on account reviews and things like that. Now, it's not your typical training. It's more of a workshop. It's with one goal in mind, though, and that's how to take your offerings, choose the best ones for your customers right now, and clearly understand how that offering could help those customers. Once you understand that, inside the workshop, we actually tailor that offering's message so you could use it to set appointments and close for the next step. So I just got finished sharing this training inside of a webinar with my students in my email list, and luckily I hit that record button so I could share it here with you on my podcast. Now, it's longer than my usual episodes, so I've broken it into 2 sessions. But you don't have to listen to it. You could actually attend the webinar if you want. That way you could get all the handouts that I give out and benefit from all the chats that we have too. So just go to www.modernsalestraining.com/yourscript, yourscript. So modernsalestraining.com/yourscript, and you can just register for the webinar right there. And you can even get the replay and all the handouts that I give inside of it. But no worries, you could also just listen to it too. So enjoy part 1. We're going to talk about the message. And the messaging is so critical. I literally had someone ask me earlier today. They said, hey, what's the right way to sell during a pandemic? How should you be doing that today? And I think it all comes down to our messaging. I mean, at other times, if we're talking about December, right, just behind us, we didn't have to worry about this. And so, you could deliver your message and some people be like, oh yeah, that might make sense, someday for our company. But now that same sort of message, if it's not thought out enough, they could be completely turned off by what you're saying and have no time to give no attention to it whatsoever. And so it's so critical to get your message right today if you want to get people excited to meet with you and get appointments today and even move those appointments forward to deals. So quick background on me for those people that don't already know me. Just like you, I haven't been through this work from home climate because of the pandemic before. So I'm not a psychologist, a psychic, economist, or a medical expert. I'm basing the information that we're going to talk about today off what I knew in the past over my 17 years at Xerox Corporation, but also what I've been applying with my clients that are in the pandemic today and how they're using this sort of information to get more appointments. And it's been helping like crazy. So I come from 17 years of Xerox, the old Xerox world. I was a top rep, top manager, moved into training, literally trained thousands of salespeople outside of Xerox around the world. My training is very simple. I help people become top sales performers. That's my mission. That's what I do with my product Sales in 21 Days. So, okay, let's get right into this right now. Okay, so you have an offering. You have clients that you're trying to reach out to. The best place to start before we ever try to sell to anybody is to better understand where they're coming from and what's going on in their brains. So this is a pretty easy thing to think about what they might be thinking. I'm sure many of you can echo this in the comments. So business owners right now, they're thinking that the world right now is filled with uncertainty. I talked to one of my clients last week and his company was doing poorly because of the lockdown. But then the governor opened up businesses and then people could start selling, and they found a crazy influx in business because people wanted to get things going because the doors were open again. And so they literally in those few weeks that the doors were open made up on their lost revenue. But then the next second, the governor says, okay, we're shutting everything down again. And now they're literally going there. How is this going to work? How are we going to continue to go? And there's just no certainty. Steve, you said it seems like people's views of the pandemic depends on their political stance. How can we best account for that? I think this training today is literally going to speak to that. So from a political standpoint, exactly, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So stick with me. There's uncertainty. They don't know exactly when things are going to happen. These business owners also know that every decision that they make for their business is critical. They don't know if they're going to make the wrong call So they don't know if they're making the wrong decision for their business or the right decision, because before in the past, they knew that if they made a bad decision, they could always, outrun it with, selling or doing better for their own company. But right now it's who knows what the future holds. Thanks for the help there, Dan, with the frozen screen. Hopefully it's back up and running again. The next thing is poor business decisions could lead to devastating results. So if you're a business owner, you know that everything that you decide right now with what you decide to buy, what you decide to invest in, if it's the wrong move, you're in trouble. And how do you know if you're doing the right things? How do you know what opportunities to take advantage of? How do you know who you can trust with your money? Because salespeople haven't stopped contacting businesses, and these businesses are thinking, I've got to be making the right moves right now. I don't necessarily want to do the same things as I was doing before the pandemic, because that might not be something that's sustainable. The people want to be making better decisions, and they want to choose the right salespeople to work with. With all of these challenges going on, all of these things happening, we as salespeople need to be seen as part of the solution. So like you mentioned, Steve, with people's different views of the pandemic and their political stance relating to it, regardless of with their view, if we as salespeople, when we're reaching out, or our sales team are reaching out to these companies or to these people, if we're seen by them as being part of the solution, and part of the solution is for them how they can do great inside this pandemic, regardless of what they think the shutdown is the right thing to do or not, we need to be seen as someone that can help them during these times. And when you're seen as part of that solution, part of the solution for them, people are going to make time for you. The setting appointments are going to be easy, right? Running effective appointments will be easy, and getting consistent business is easy. And I've already seen this with the customers that I've been working with, my clients. And it all comes down to, how are you presenting what you sell? If it's part of the solution, things become easy right now. And so what we're going to do in the first part of this 2-part section of this training, I'm going to help you really lock in on the offerings that you have and how you can tailor them to make sure that those offerings are part of the solution for your clients. That's the first piece. And once you're all locked in there, then we'll get into part 2, which is how do you then convey those offerings that you decide to choose right now? How do you convey that over the phone to get appointments, things like that? So I'm going to give you handouts for part 1, and I'm going to give you things in part 2. So there's 2 different things we're going to pass out. Okay, let's get into part 1 here. Business leadership. So now we're keying in on how we can make our offerings part of the solution for these clients that we're contacting. And our clients want to do 4 things. Before this, they typically wanted to do 3, but the 4th is really something that we've added because of the pandemic, because it's just a wild card that everyone's having to figure out. But the first one is businesses right now want to make money. They want to have profit, and that's not any different than it ever has been. I mean, just think about if you started your own company, you've been working for someone else you might have been for your entire career. The idea of working for yourself is there's a draw to making more money. So these business owners out there, they have their own company because that's what they want. They want to make money. Now, if you can find a way to tie your solution into helping them do that right now, then what happens is instantly it's going to be something that's interesting for them, because they're thinking maybe their normal ways of making business today aren't there anymore, and they need to be more creative, but they don't want to lose out on the money that they were making and getting used to. The second thing, we'll talk about these more in depth in a second. But the second thing is they want to grow their organization. And just like, again, take that same business owner again. That business owner that started their company, and because they wanted to make money, they realized that eventually there's only so much that they can do to make the amount of money that they can make. I mean, there's so many hours in the day. So the idea comes out, well, what if I have people underneath me? What if I bring people on and they grow this company with me? Well, the more people you have means there's more money you could make, right? But there's always costs when you grow, and there's always costs with more revenue. So the idea becomes, for leadership, business leaders are looking for ways, new ideas that they can grow their business and obviously do it as profitably as possible. So that also might be something that you can tailor your offering to. The third thing, which is interesting right now, is they want to keep their employees happy, and they also want to keep their employees. As we all know, there's a lot of organizations that have been laying off their staff, and that's just, unfortunately, the results of the pandemic, regardless of what side you're on it. And the idea is that, people don't want to lay them off, because if they lay off their employees, then this infrastructure that they built, that allows them to make the kind of money they want to make because they grew their organization at a certain level. As the people leave, so does that revenue potential leave for them, right? They need to find a way to keep their employees happy, to keep them efficient, to keep them effective. And if your offering does that in some way, you're going to find it helps you become part of the solution for them. And the last thing, they want to survive this pandemic. And just like anybody out there with uncertainty, I mean, you might be thinking about this for yourself. How do I make money right now? How do I get through this? How do I weather out the storm? Well, same things with our customers. And there are ways that we can do this in our messaging to show that we are the safe solution, safe decision right now. Let's break down each of these one by one. And right now, if you go into the chat, I'm going to give you one of the files. So this is a handout. Here, you should see it in the chat right now. And this handout is something that you can download right away. It's yours. And you can print them out. Just make sure you fit it to page when you're printing it. And what's going to happen is I'm going to walk you through how to fill this out for yourself and give you some examples on how to best do that. So if you have any sort of challenges printing it out, make sure you say it in the comments and we'll help you get that done. So as you're opening that up and as you're printing that out, all you need is a pen and paper, obviously. What you want to do right now is you want to list your best solutions that could help right now. So let me give you an example. You might have 10 different solutions. Great. You got it, Jessica. Perfect. You might have 10 different solutions right now that you offer for your company. Your sales team might be going after. Maybe it's that many. But what this exercise right here is designed to help you really lock in on what are the best solutions that will really help and really be the ones that you should be focusing on as you're targeting these companies right now. Because it might not be all of them. Some of them might just have to wait and maybe just once you get the deal, the first deal into that account. Let's look at each of these one by one because you want to judge your offerings based upon how they relate to these. And they might relate to one or they might relate to all four. So the first one is, which of your offerings could help them increase profits? I'll give you an example for this. Okay, so I came from the Xerox world, so manufacturing, you might be able to relate with that in some way, but in Xerox has a graphic printer, okay, like a printer that prints out really nice quality color prints, and these things go for anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000 if you can imagine. But the reason why these graphic printers, which isn't all the devices obviously they have, but what makes these graphic printers so interesting and special to companies is they help them make money. And the way that works is, I want you to think about right now, people aren't going into office buildings right now that often, right? But people are still going to their mailbox, so you got your house where you're at right now, probably. You can still go down the street to your mailbox and you can, get your mail. Well, the big companies out there like to do something called one-to-one marketing. And what one-to-one marketing is I don't know if you've had this happen to you before, but imagine opening up the mail and you've got a letter that's addressed to your dog. My dog is Maddie, and it says, "Hey Maddie, we miss you at, the vet," right? And it says, "Why don't you come in for your next checkup and we'll give you a free dog bone or something." Well, so if I'm looking at that, I'm the owner. I'm saying, wow, this marketing collateral that was sent to me in the mail has my dog's name on it. It's hyper focused to me because they know I'm reading it, right? And they know I love my dog, right? So that right there has been proven to get more people to act upon a piece of mail. Compare that to all the other garbage that we get inside the mail. It just goes in the trash. But that one's when you look at it and you go, oh, maybe I should call those people. That is done on a graphic printer. And so if I knew that, if I chose one of my offerings, and that's one of the things that I did offer, I would then think about how could I lock in that sort of message on the industry that I'm calling? Because you might want to change it depending on who you're contacting. And maybe it involves a story. Maybe it involves the benefits that your product offers. But profits, telling people how they can make money, how they could make money using your offering, if you have that, is a very important way to do it because that's what they want. Second thing is revenue. So what could be a new revenue source for them? This is also I could use the same example with, again, the graphic printer, in that maybe they weren't making money with that sort of business in the past. Maybe they were just, they weren't using that sort of device to have that sort of revenue come in and ROI with their marketing collaterals, but now they do have it. And that could be something that helps them grow their business in different areas. Whatever it is, you might have something. Often our offerings help companies save money. And if it helps them save money in some way, then maybe your message is people get our offerings to help them cut these costs over here so they can free up that capital and apply it over here, right? Which in turn helps them grow their company, right? Helps them create a new revenue source for their business and ultimately helps them increase the profits. So those are things that you want to make sure that you're really locking in on the offerings. It might not be one, it could be multiple things that you have. Then we get into happy employees. So what offerings do you have right now that can help your potential customer save time, improve their efficiency, reduce errors? What are those things for you? What are those things what offerings do you have that do that? Because that's also something that we want to lock in on. And now your offerings might do all three of these. Maybe it does one of them. Whatever it is, that's what you want to use, that sheet that I just gave you that you printed out. So just brainstorm, write down a bunch of ideas at the top, all the different offerings and maybe arrows about where they go to. And then ultimately, when you choose the offerings you want on the bottom of the sheet, you can write in what that is. How does that this specific offering apply to profit? How does your specific offering apply to revenue? How does a specific offering apply to giving them happy employees? And the last thing here is survival. What makes this offering a safe decision right now for your customer? And that's really critical. Social proof is a big deal. And we need to make sure we're showing that, hey, they're not the guinea pig during the pandemic trying this solution out. You had other people try it out and they had great results from it. And you know that they can have the same sort of results too. And they don't need to worry whatsoever about it. At this point, real quick, you should be filling out your sheet. And as you fill that out, make sure you put the comments on the side. How about adding risk mitigation to the list too? Yeah, absolutely. I would say risk mitigation, that's really comes down to survival. It could be like a survival technique. How are they surviving during these times, Steve, right? How are they making the right decisions for their business? And you giving them that extra peace of mind that they're taking an offering that is going to help them reduce risk too. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can swing it. But finding out about risk mitigation, I would also connect that, Steve, to how that, if they didn't have that and they had to go through and risk things, that they could potentially have loss of business, loss of revenue, right? Loss of profit. And I would be adding in how with risk, your services, if it does involve risk mitigation, how your services will ultimately help them make more money because they won't have to make those mistakes. So yeah, that's a great ad, Steve. If you guys have specific offerings and how it relates to profit, revenue, and happy customers and survival. Also, by the way, I'm happy to review those for you and give you sort of feedback. You can always email that to me, by the way, at derek@modernSalesTraining.com. Just handwrite it, maybe even take a picture of it, send it to me. I'll review it and give you feedback on it and give you any sort of advice that I would say to adjust it. So I'm going to give you an example. Now that you've spent some time filling this out, I'm going to show you how I might fill it out for a product inside of the agricultural space. I've been doing a lot of work in the ag industry. One offering could be drip irrigation. Okay. And don't quote me on the exact numbers for the drip irrigation, but it's the general concept you're going to get. So if drip irrigation was the offering that I chose, I would write in for profit. Well, drip irrigation helps organizations save money on wasted water costs. The ROI, the return on investment, is 4 months after the install, and the profit is on average 22% off of their water costs. This is a good example of how you probably have offerings today that these statistics on the top of your head, and you know how it directly impacts that. And you should be writing that down on the sheet of paper. You got the offering at the top, and under profit, you wrote down on the side, how does it help in companies that you're targeting from a profit standpoint? This is an example for drip irrigation. How about revenue? So drip irrigation, same offering, produces 17% more crops per harvest. That would immediately increase the top and bottom line of the organization. Going back to drip irrigation, if we're talking about water, right? And you're thinking about how water is there's typically overwatering that happens on a farm. And when the overwatering happens or underwatering happens, you lose crops, right? You lose crops. And so this drip irrigation is still a relatively new offering that's happening out there. There's not a crazy number of accounts that have gone that far, a crazy number of growers, but it's been so popular because of the fact that if you just use this technique of drip irrigation and this technology around it, then the crops get the right amount of water, the right amount that they need to actually continue to grow. And so at the end of it, when they're ready to harvest, they have almost the entire harvest that survived, right? All their crops are ready to go. So on average, it could be 17% more crops per harvest, which means that if they didn't have drip irrigation, they were just losing 17% of their crops, and they knew it. Every single harvest, they'd be like, yeah, we expect to lose that many. That's how much we typically lose, and so this is an example of how this one offering not only helps them with profit, but it helps them with making more money than they would before because they have more crops at the end for harvest. Then we go to happy employees. So drip irrigation automates the manual process of watering and the stress of potentially overwatering the crops, allowing the employees to spend time on other revenue generating tasks. So as you can imagine, inside of these fields, there's a lot of workers out there, and they're all making sure that there's enough water on all of the crops. This is very manual, and it's also a very basic thing too. And so if this farm is looking to do unbelievable things and things to survive and even thrive during these times, they probably want to better allocate the workers doing things that make more sense for their farm. Drip irrigation gives them that automation that can help them, do that with their employees. Then we get to survival. And for survival, farms that have drip irrigation operation in place have been outperforming growers without it by 200%. An example is, I'm giving two random examples. Again, these are numbers that I'm sure there's something similar to it, but I'm being general because I'm not exactly in the industry. I didn't grow up in that industry, but this is a perfect example of showing social proof with the ABC grower and XYZ grower, but then it's also showing how it's a safe decision right now. It's not just some random, they're not rolling the dice, they're not risking trying this thing out. That's how you want to be looking at the first part of this. We spent a lot of time going into how does your offerings, because you might have a bunch, but what are the key offerings that you can talk about and lead with? Doesn't mean that's the only one that you're going to end up selling, but sometimes we need to get in with one offering right now, the one that makes you more of part of a solution than you would normally. And so the one that you lead with probably has the most of these. It hits the profit, hits the revenue, hits the happy employees, hits the survival. And you now know after using this worksheet how it relates to all of these. And that's the place that we start with all this. So I'll pause right there because now we have reasons to be part of the solution. How are we doing so far, everybody? Let me know in the comments while I drink some water here. Make sure you guys can hear me okay. James, Dan, Steve. Awesome so far, Jessica. Great. Thank you for that. Yeah, this is literally, the first part is all about understanding how you fit in right now. And that's how your offerings are part of the solution. Great. Thanks, guys. The next part from here, now that you hopefully have a page of notes for what you did. How you doing, Ashton? You have a page of notes on the offerings and how it relates to those four. Now this next part, the second part that we're going to go into now, is we're going to take that you just wrote down. And by the way, I'll also send you the replay for this in case you wanted to go back through it again. But now the next thing that we're doing now is how do you take that and then convert it to something that you can use on the phone, in your prospecting, in your outreach, even on your appointments that you have to get your customers, even when you're checking in on them, to be open to looking at something else. It's your way of showing them that you're part of the solution right now and that you have something that could potentially make a big impact for them. You should get them interested in looking into it more. We will continue with part 2 in the next episode. Again, if you want to watch it and get the handouts, just go to www.modernsalestraining.com/yourscript, YOURSCRIPT, modernsalestraining.com/yourscript. Thank you again for allowing me to join you on your sales journey. See you next time. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, then you have to come check out my free 40-minute sales training course where I'll turn you into a virtual selling machine. Inside it, I give you 4 powerful prospecting tips that you need to master in order to dominate the new virtual sales world we are in. Come get it 100% free on my website at www.salesin21days.com. That's salesin21days.com. I'd love for you to check out this mini training. See you there.